So, did you see what TCU head coach Sonny Dykes said, calling out the SEC for their, shall we say, not so difficult scheduling, especially late in the season? Well, you're going to love it, and I want to share it with you and tell you how great it is. Pete Mundo, HeartlandCollegeSports.com. Thanks for joining us. Thanks for being a part of the show on YouTube Live. Subscribe. Share the video, and boy, let me tell you about this. So Sonny Dykes talking to the media, getting set for college football playoffs Saturday. They're going to take on Michigan. And what Sonny Dykes had to say about the SEC was beautiful. So here's the quote from Sonny Dykes. He was talking about how, TCU hadn't had a bye week since September 17th. Think about that. September 17th, the last bye week for the TCU Horned Frogs. It was a beautiful yet brutal schedule. I mean, it was great if you're a football purist. You're playing every week, no weeks off. It was tough. But that's not the case in the SEC. Now, nobody calls it out like that. Nobody says it like that. We know the national media never talks about the SEC scheduling like they should. Well, so TCU plays 9 straight Big 12 conference games with no weeks off, and then make it 10 because they got to play in the Big 12 championship game, which, of course, they lost to K-State, but ultimately still got in to the college football playoffs. So Sonny Dykes, talking about the SEC schedule, said, quote, "We don't have the good fortune to play an out-of-conference game like the SEC does in Week 10 or Week 11. You're not going to catch the Citadel in Week 10. We caught Texas." Let's go, Sonny Dykes. I love it. I love it from Sonny Dykes calling out the SEC. When he says that, yeah, the week that TCU is holding Texas to 3 points on offense, let's go through just to remind you. All right, I'm just here to play the guy who's a friendly reminder. That's it. That's all I'm doing. Let's remind you of what the SEC schedule looked like, just some of the games that were being played, around the time that Texas was taking on TCU, and TCU was, of course, getting set for a college football playoff. Because I'm that kind of guy. That's the only reason I'm doing this, okay? Because I'm that kind of guy. Let me pull up some of these games for you. Mississippi State taking on East Tennessee State. Texas A&M playing mighty UMass. Auburn taking on the great Western Kentucky. Missouri was playing New Mexico State. Oh, boy. Shaking in your boots at that one, are you? Hey, can only play who's on the schedule, right, SEC? Isn't that what we're told? Isn't that how it works? Oh, the SEC is so good. I mean, what do you want to do? Arkansas is playing Liberty on Saturday, November 5th. It's a tough game. Can only play who's on the schedule, right, guys? Wink, wink, nod, nod. It must be nice in November to have some of these cupcake FCS games. Jeez, it's a good spot to be in. It's a joke. It's the biggest joke in all of college football. And not enough college football media folks call it out. Why? Because they're SEC fanboys and they're SEC homers. And they are not willing to say the difficult things that need to be said about the joke that is SEC football scheduling, on top of the fact that they only play 8 conference games. The SEC only plays 8 conference games. Never forget that. But, it's the SEC, so every game is so tough, and it's only a game. So you got to have a break in there with an FCS matchup. No, you don't. Spare me the nonsense with that. As Jonathan writes on YouTube here, the SEC has all the cards stacked in their favor and show how overrated they are in bowl season. You're right, Jonathan. You're absolutely right. It's a joke. It's an absolute joke. And it's ridiculous that more people aren't calling out the SEC, and I'm glad Sonny Dykes is. And Sonny Dykes, I believe, is going to become a very important voice for the Big 12 in terms of just, first off, smart, competent, having success, has respect around the sport. The Big 12 is going to be looking for that guy or those guys going forward. And some guys don't want to be that. Matt Campbell doesn't really want to be that. I don't think Dave Aranda really wants to be that. I don't think Chris Kleiman, Lance Leipold want to be that. Mike Gundy can be that, but Mike Gundy's got a few things to figure out in his own program right now. Sonny Dykes can be that. I think Joey McGuire can be that as Texas Tech keeps climbing up the ladder. I think all those things are absolutely true. So, but Sonny Dykes right now with the success that he's having in a top 5 media market with everything going on right now for TCU, call him out. Call out the SEC for their scheduling. And Sonny Dykes did just that. And I love it. And I hope that it's a sign of things to come. For Sonny Dykes being an important voice for this conference, especially after OU and Texas leave, there's going to be a void. Someone's going to have to step in. And if he keeps this program humming, if he keeps this program competitive, if he keeps this program moving in the right direction, it is going to be a very, very good thing for this league to have a guy like Sonny Dykes speaking out, calling out the SEC and some of the other conferences. And this is not bulletin board material. When Sonny Dykes said at Media Day on Thursday before playing Michigan in the college football playoff, when he said, quote, "We don't have the good fortune to play an out-of-conference game like the SEC does in week 10 or week 11. That's not bulletin board material for Michigan. They don't care. Michigan doesn't care about that. They're a Big Ten team. Now, maybe if TCU gets past them and they end up playing Georgia in a championship game, that could provide some bulletin board material. But at that point, it's a national championship. Come on." So this is great. I was so fired up when I saw that quote from Sonny Dykes. I was like, yes, yes, yes. Connor says, other than the Big 12, what's the best conference? Well, in football, I think the SEC and the Big 12 proved themselves to be top to bottom the best conferences in college football. 1-2, 2-1, however you want to split it this year. I mean, look at what Oklahoma just did against the Florida State team. That was ranked in the top 15? Oklahoma was not a good team and is not a good team and was missing some of its top players and most explosive players. And they almost pulled off a win against Florida State in the Cheez-It Bowl. Top 15 team that lost by a field goal in the final minute of the game. They should have won that game. You know, once they fumbled the ball in the fourth quarter, Florida State went ahead. That felt like it was kind of game, set, match. But the Big 12, I know the Big 12 hasn't had a great start to bowl season, but, I often say bowl games matter, but also the matchups that you draw matter. The Big 12 has been and will be an underdog in almost every single bowl game that they have this year. They drew a pretty tough draw of games, and that's just sometimes how it goes. And I said that in the show where I previewed and picked every single game. I had the Big 12 losing most of their bowl games this year, despite the fact that I still believe it's the strongest conference in America, them and the SEC this year. And I don't think that's even all that debatable. But when you draw these tough bowl games, as the Big 12 has this season, that's just how it goes sometimes. The league went undefeated a couple of years ago in bowl games, had a very good bowl game last year, very good bowl season last year. But this year, the matchups are what they are. The only game that they haven't won yet that I thought they would win is Baylor in the Armed Forces Bowl. Of course, Baylor ended up losing that game to Air Force. So such is life right now. But all in all, I'm not concerned about the Big 12. Big 12 is going to be just fine. Everything's going to be A-okay. And Sonny Dykes is continuing to be, to me, the man. And I'm here for it. I love everything about it. It's good for the league. It's exciting for the conference. And we need more guys, not just in the Big 12, but around college football, saying what Sonny Dykes is saying and saying what I've been saying on this show for years. If you're new to this show on YouTube, I've been running this Big 12 site, heartlandcollegesports.com, for 8 years now. We're reaching millions of Big 12 fans every single month on all of our different platforms. So I've been doing this now for 8 years. I work in what you want to call maybe traditional media by day, doing radio in Kansas City. But, doing sports radio, news radio, I've done it all. And I'm telling you, I've been saying this for almost a decade, if not more, that the SEC scheduling is a joke. 8 conference games, FCS game in November, and they never get called out for it. Never once. And Sonny Dykes, getting set for a college football playoff, is willing to do it. And I'm here to support the guy. So thank you guys for being here. Share this on YouTube. Share the show. Subscribe to the channel. So grateful for everything that you're doing. Find us on the podcast. I had a great podcast conversation today, only on the podcast, with Jeremy Clark of Horned Frog Blitz. He covers TCU. He's at the Fiesta Bowl. We talked about the game this weekend against Michigan, what they need to do right, what they can do to win the game. So that is up on the podcast, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. So be sure to go check it out, because not all the content from YouTube goes to the podcast. Not all the content from the podcast goes to YouTube. That's just how it works. So thank you guys for being here. Follow us Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. We are in each of those places on each of those platforms. A lot of you guys commenting, as you rightfully should. The SEC is weak with 8 conference games. We're going to keep calling them out. Join us for the ride. I'm Pete Mundo. You guys take care. We'll talk to you soon.